The culprits responsible for the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in New York and Washington were quickly identified. They came from al-Qaida, a group of radical Islamists, operating out of Afghanistan under the protection of the Taliban government. After the Taliban regime was toppled by U.S.-backed fighters, al-Qaida, along with many of its Taliban hosts, fled across the border into a new safe haven in Pakistan's wild and lawless tribal areas. It is here, intelligence officials say, that al-Qaida has regrouped. But 7 years after 9/11, is the main terrorist threat a centrally organized al-Qaida operating out of Pakistan, or is the threat organized much closer to home? The National Counterterrorism Center pulls information from all of America's intelligence agencies and other sources to track terrorist movement and activity. NCTC Chief Michael Leiter says that what intelligence officials call al-Qaida core is still plotting to attack the United States.
I would say al-Qaida core continues to pose a very significant risk to the homeland that, although it has changed, is still a very significant threat.
The intelligence officer who led the unit hunting Osama bin Laden says al-Qaida is not the same monolithic organization that carried out the 2001 attacks. Michael Scheuer was with the CIA at the time.
Because we failed to eliminate al-Qaida and its main allies, they've regrouped, refitted, reformed. They're still a dangerous threat. There's now a whole second tier of threat, though. People who are inspired by the example or the rhetoric or the ideology of al-Qaeda-ism, if you will.
Scheuer says al-Qaeda's primary force is inspirational.
We tend to forget that al-Qaeda, through bin Laden's words, through Zawahiri's words, it has never been primarily a fighting organization. Its main goal that it set for itself was to be a vanguard organization whose chief responsibility was to incite the Muslim world.
Former CIA analyst Mark Sageman says these al-Qaeda-inspired homegrown Islamic radicals are less educated than the previous terrorist generation and angry over perceived discrimination.
The notion that the West is at war against Islam really has some traction with those young folks because they lump everything together. They lump what's happening to them personally with the image that they see in Iraq, for instance, and I think it's all part of a grand Western conspiracy against Islam.
The 4 suicide bombers who were accused of attacking London's transport system in 2005 were young British Muslims. Mark Sageman says the homegrown terrorist plots are tougher to intercept.
In the past, we could discover one plot and then roll everybody up. Now it's much more difficult because they all scattered around, and that's why I call it the Little S Jihad.
NCTC Chief Michael Leiter says these young alienated Muslims pose a particular threat to European nations.
Certainly what we've seen in the United Kingdom is of a more significant scope and a significant depth than anything we've seen in the United States. All that being said, I don't think anyone who's responsible for counterterrorism work here in the United States wants to rest on that history. Part of our job is to ensure that we don't end up getting to a place as severe as we see in some parts of Europe.
Analysts say that it is often difficult to determine whether an attack is by al-Qaida or just al-Qaida inspired. Leiter says al-Qaida still plans and orders attacks.
As a precautionary measure.
In 2006, British and American counterterrorism officials disrupted a plot to blow up transatlantic airliners that Leiter says was certainly an operation by al-Qaida core. Gary Thomas, VOA News, Washington.